What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Ryan Pineda Show. We talk all things money, real estate, and entrepreneurship. And in today's video, we're going to talk about, is it better to buy a brand new home or a fixer-upper? So trying to figure out what actually better means is going to be very subjective to many people. So I'm going to do my best to define what exactly better means for me and for what I think it means for most. If you're talking about flipping a property for a profit, it's almost never going to make sense to buy a brand new home. The builder is going to be selling it to you at top dollar because that is what they do. They're trying to build it and make a profit. So if you're trying to flip, then the fixer is obviously going to be better. That could be the end of this video. But for most people, you're not talking about buying a new home versus a fixer with a flip. You're talking about it for either your primary residence or possibly a rental. And that's the assumption I'm going to use for this video. Is it better to buy a new home or a fixer-upper if you're gonna keep it as your primary residence or a rental? And if you're new to this channel and you're wondering, why should I even listen to this guy? I've been in real estate for over 10 years. I've flipped hundreds of homes. I've been a realtor. My current house that I live in now, I bought brand new. The house I lived in before that, I bought as a fixer-upper. So I can tell you from firsthand experience why I feel the way I feel in these situations. So in order to figure out which way is best, let's go over the pros and cons of both. So first, let's talk about the pros of a fixer-upper. Now, typically with a fixer-upper, you are going to be buying it at a discounted price. If you're buying a fixer-upper at market value, then you probably bought a bad house. So I'm gonna assume you're getting a good deal by buying this beat-up property. And since you got a discounted price, you're going to be getting instant equity in the home. How much equity you're getting? I don't know. How much equity you're getting is gonna depend on how good of a deal you got. But most people buy fixer-uppers because they're getting good deals and gaining equity. And that in turn will increase your net worth. So those are all great things. Another great part of the fixer-upper is that you are able to renovate it however you want. So if you're gonna use it as a primary residence, you're now gonna have a clean slate to pick all of your finishes. You can pick the flooring, you can design the kitchen how you want, pick your cabinet colors, pick your countertops, you can do the bathrooms however you want. It allows you to do a lot of different customization. And in many fixer-uppers, you're gonna be changing the layout and the floor plan. So the design aspects of fixer-uppers are great. And as I said before, my previous house I lived in was a total fixer-upper. We redid everything. The kitchens, the flooring, the doors, the paint, the bathrooms, the landscaping, the pool, everything was done custom to how we wanted it. And my wife will be the first one to tell you, she says that she loves that home more than our current home. Because that home, she literally got to pick every single aspect of the home. And so she felt like it was hers. And I know many people that buy a fixer-upper for their primary residence feel the same exact way. Because when you're customizing every little detail, it's gonna feel like it's yours. And you're gonna feel a sense of accomplishment every time you walk into the house knowing what it was to what it is now. Another advantage of the fixer-upper is you can be in older, trendier parts of town. There's a lot of gentrification in these older areas of town. And typically, there's not even room for new builds in these older areas. So if you wanna live there and have a newer modern home, you can't really build. All you can do is take what's already there, fix it up to your liking, make it modern, and have it be yours. So the fixer-upper allows you to be in any part of town. Another pro that I've seen with fixer-uppers is that those parts of town sometimes are much cheaper than the newer build parts of town. That's because a lot of the homes are older and dated, and a lot of people don't want to put in the work to get them up to par. So it kind of goes back to the first part of, hey, you're getting a good deal, you're getting a good value. And look, that's not always true. Every city's different, every town's different. There are certainly older areas that are much more valuable than newer areas. No doubt about it. But in almost every town, you can find an older area where you're gonna get a really good value on a home. So those are some of the pros of a fixer-upper. Now let's talk about the pros of a new build. Now let me say, when I'm talking new build, I'm talking about buying directly from a builder. You could do your own custom home and you can do your own spec home. You could even do a development. But for most people, when you're buying a new build, it's gonna be from a builder who's building a whole community. And that's what I did when I bought the home we live in now. It was from a builder who was building multiple homes in the area. So some pros of the new build are that yes, you can pick your design. Now, unlike the fixer-upper, your design is gonna be more limited. You're gonna be limited to what the builder allows you to do. With a fixer-upper, you can do whatever you want, but nonetheless, you can still pick a design and get something that fits you. Another pro is that it is going to cost you much less money over time. There's going to be less maintenance cost with a new build. When your plumbing, your electrical, your AC, all these things are brand new, the maintenance costs over time are just naturally gonna be less. Even if you remodel a fixer-upper, typically you're not replacing every single thing. If you did, you'd be tearing it down and building a new home. There's always gonna be old parts of the home that need maintenance. With a new build, not so much. Everything is brand new, so they should not have as much maintenance cost over time. Another pro with new builds is that they are much more energy efficient. The way that they build now versus the way they built 50 to 100 years ago is way different. We have better insulation, we have better building techniques, we have better ways of doing things in the builds. And your energy bill in a new build should be considerably less than an older home. Another benefit to new builds is you're typically going to be around newer homes. If that builder is making a whole new community, all the homes around you are going to be brand new, well kept. There's probably going to be an HOA where everyone must keep their home nice. Not so much in older areas, right? In older areas, it's a mixed basket on what kind of homes you're dealing with. Some can look really nice, others can look torn to crap, and there's not much you can do about it. So with the new build, having other nice homes all around you is a good benefit. Lastly, if you're buying this new build to rent it out, you're probably going to get a better tenant. Historically, tenants are willing to pay a lot more to live in a new build than they are an older home. Even if that older home is fixed up and nice, people like living in new things. We all like brand new things, right? I like buying brand new clothes. I like buying brand new cars. I think people are always going to choose to have something brand new versus used. So you should attract a better tenant who's willing to pay more. So that covers pretty much the pros of each. Now let's talk about the cons of each. And I've addressed some of them during the pros, but let's go into all of them. So with fixer-uppers, as I said before, one of the big cons is that you are in an older area where not everyone else has fixed up their home. You do run the risk of having the nicest home on the block. Maybe you totally redid yours, you got fresh paint, you got great landscaping, great curb appeal, and then your next door neighbor's house is just terrible. The house hasn't been renovated in over 50 years, everything is beat up, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Because many of these old homes are not in HOAs, no one's forcing them to upkeep their home, and so when you're in these older areas, there's not much you can do about your neighbors. Unless you can buy it, fix and flip it, or keep it as a rental. But other than that, there's not much you can do. The next negative for a fixer-upper would be the actual rehab process. So even though my wife loved having a house that was exactly hers, every detail picked by her, we did not enjoy the actual rehab process. It took months to get done, we went way over budget, picking everything was very stressful, and when you're doing a fixer-upper, that's just what comes with the territory. Renovations are always stressful, especially when you're going to live in them. When you're gonna live in a fixer-upper, you're picking every little thing perfectly. And you don't think about how many little items you gotta pick. You gotta pick the door handles, the door hinges, the doors, the baseboards, the door casing. That's just like all the things around a door. And then imagine doing that for every little thing. I gotta pick the kitchen cabinets, the kitchen handles. Where do I want each cabinet? How do I want it to function? With flips, you're more generic, but when it's for you, you wanna make sure every little thing is exactly how you want it. So the rehab on a fixer-upper is stressful, especially if it's for you. As we alluded to before, another con of older homes is that they're less energy efficient and they're gonna have more maintenance. And there's just no way around it. They're built so long ago that they're just not energy efficient. Even if you've replaced all of the nice things like the flooring and the cabinets in the kitchen, you still have the old plumbing, you may still have the old AC, you've got a roof that maybe you didn't replace, and all of these things are gonna require maintenance at some point much sooner than a new build. So you gotta keep that in mind. And lastly, we alluded to this, you may not get as good of a tenant as a new build. Your house may be amazing, but if your neighbor's houses are not, that's gonna affect what kind of tenant you're able to get. And that doesn't mean you're gonna get a bad tenant, I just don't think you're gonna get as good of a tenant as new builds will get. And that's about all the cons on the fixer-upper, so let's talk about the cons with the new build. My first big beef with new builds is that you're typically not gonna get a discount. The builder built this home to make a profit. There's typically no distress unless the market is just terrible and they wanna get rid of inventory as fast as possible, but in most scenarios you're not going to get a great deal, and the builder is selling all the other similar homes at that price or near it, so they can't just go and sell you one at 80% of market value. They don't have to. They got a bunch of other people who are willing to pay market value for it, so don't expect a huge discount on a new build. You can definitely beat the builder up on price, but at the end of the day you're not getting a deal like you would with a fixer-upper. Another negative that I hear people say is all the houses in new builds look the exact same. They're building very cookie cutter homes and you can't really tell one of them from another. There's no character in the home. And I would agree with this. Many builders only have a couple of different models they're putting in a community, and it's not like you're gonna go repaint the home right after you buy it to distinguish it from your neighbors. And in fact, if there's an HOA, then they won't even let you do that. So yes, there's no character and they all probably look the exact same. Some people don't really care about that, others think it's a big deal. And while we're on the topic of HOAs, that's another one where people might think it's a pro or a con. They might think it's a pro because everyone has to maintain a certain level of standards, but they might think it's a con because now you can't do what you want to do, you can't have character with your home, maybe there's rules you don't like, maybe the HOA president's a jerk. Personally, I tend to dislike HOAs more than I like them, but that's just my preference. And lastly, as we said before, you can do a custom home build if you choose, but that's gonna cost you a lot of money. It's usually always gonna be cheaper to buy a home from a builder because they get economies of scale. They bought that whole piece of land, they did all the utilities together, they've got a very big supply chain where they can get materials cheaply, they can pass all of those savings on to the consumer. When you go custom, you gotta incur all of those costs on your own, and it's gonna be very costly. So if you're thinking, well, Ryan,
I wanna do a new build, but I'm gonna do it all myself. So it will stand out. It will be custom. I'm not gonna look like my neighbors, but I'm still gonna get all the benefits.
True, but it's gonna cost you a pretty penny. And on top of that, you are now managing a construction project, just like the Fixer Upper, but on steroids. Managing a brand new build home is not something that is easy. So now that we know the pros and cons of both, what exactly does that leave us with? Well, as I said in the beginning, it's hard to decide what exactly better means. It's gonna actually be really subjective. If you value getting a good deal with equity, you probably wanna get a fixer-upper. If you value having the latest technology, being energy efficient, not worrying about maintenance, you probably want to go with a new build. It's funny because I've been watching what the hedge funds do. The hedge funds are interesting because they're smart people with a ton of money, so what they're doing is probably a good indicator of what you might want to do. And 10 years ago, after the Great Recession, they were buying up all the foreclosure fixer-uppers. They did that for years. They either flipped them or kept them as rentals. As inventory dried up, as appreciation happened, a lot of them dumped all of those assets and sold them. The new trend that hedge funds are doing is called build for rent. These hedge funds are building their own communities, just like a builder would, but instead of selling them off like a builder, they're just keeping them. They're keeping them all as rentals. And it's an interesting concept that I probably want to talk more about in another video, so if you want me to make that video on the build for rent, make sure you comment below, but it's something to keep your eye on as an investor because they definitely know what they're doing. When it comes to a primary residence, like I said, it's gonna really be up to your preference. When it comes to rentals, your preference is obviously gonna play a role, but more than likely it's gonna come down to the numbers. Does the ROI make sense if you buy a fixer-upper? Does it make sense if you buy a new build? That's gonna vary in every single area. But anyways, I hope you got a lot of value out of this video. Do me a big favor, go hit that like button, go subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you're following me on all my socials. And until next time, take care.